Perfect. Okay. We're doing well. We're getting there. Sorry, this is going to be a lot from me, guys, and I promise I'll stop talking soon. So obviously we have 2 wards being represented here tonight. I think Carolyn mentioned it gets a bit complicated with really small numbers of candidates combined with really small numbers of participants. So we decided to kind of pop them together. Hopefully you'll still be able to get a lot out of engaging with your candidate. It won't be too confusing. So the candidates we have here for tonight from the Bellevue ward are Astrid Judge, Austin King, give us away, yeah, that's a good idea, thanks guys, Greg Ball, Sienna Watson, and from Cotham we have Bill Young. And I have to keep an eye out because we may have a late inclusion. Felicity Sinfield might be popping in. She's had a prior engagement and might be able to come afterwards.
So that means that Jim Park, Alex Sawyer and Kieran Long are not participating in the forum. So we're just letting you know who all the candidates are. So, yeah.
Yeah. So we've invited all the candidates. Some have chosen not to be here for a variety of reasons. Some have let us know why they can't come. Some of them haven't responded, and so we don't know why they haven't come. If you'd like to contact any of the candidates who haven't come along tonight, Brenda will pop a link to in the chat to the VEC website where you can find their contact details. As we always do in lighter footprints meetings, we will treat our candidates who are putting themselves out there in the public arena with respect, and that will be reflected in how we question them and how we respond, clap our hands and so forth. So just an extra reminder to keep that respect at the forefront of your mind when you're posting in the chat. If you have any tech issues throughout the night, Brenda will also post a number that you can, and an email that you can contact if you need some help. Before we get into it properly, I'll just quickly run over how things will run from here on out. We're going to start with some questions that we've prepared, which Brenda has also put in the chat. Each candidate will have 5 minutes to answer these questions. We'll give you a time warning with one. I've written bell, but it's going to be me dinging my water bottle. With one bell when there's a minute left, and 2, and then you've got to finish your sentence and stop speaking. So all attendees have access to the chat, which you can access by clicking on the little speech button bubble icon at the bottom of your screen. Sometimes it's in the more section. And once that chat window is open on the right hand side of your screen, there's a box at the bottom to type and send messages to everyone. As the candidates are speaking, you can type questions there, and then after they've done their first 5 minutes, we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. So questions can relate to what the candidate's saying, or to other significant issues, or anything at all really that you're interested in. After the candidates speak, Brenda will then read audience questions from the chat. Each question will be offered to all candidates, and we'll try to be fair in giving candidates equal opportunity to hold the floor. It's likely that there will be not enough time to cover all the questions, and if there are a lot of questions about a particular topic, we might kind of combine or condense them a little bit. If we don't get to your question and you'd like to, please feel free to contact the candidates individually via the VEC site that Brenda's posted. You can also find information about enrolment and other useful things there as well. It's probably outside of our scope to cover questions that are specific to one really narrow local issue. So please contact particular candidates or council itself about those kinds of issues. To conclude the evening, we'll give each candidate 2 minutes to summarise their position, give their final messages, and then we'll wrap it all up. Does anyone have any of the candidates have any questions about any of those processes? That all sounds fine. Great, perfect. So I'm going to stop talking so much now. I'll get Brenda to read our questions, which again, if you need to come back to, you can find in the chat.
So what we were thinking was if people could introduce themselves and talk about the main reasons that you're running for council. And then the other question that we had was, and these are in the chat, so in terms of open governance, are you satisfied with the current processes for community involvement? And within your answer, we wondered if you could, whether you supported the continuation of the sort of post-COVID, given the post-COVID restrictions, what they've done, but we've also been able to have more public access through live streaming and recordings of non-confidential council meetings. So we wondered if you were interested in continuing that if you were elected to council. And we also wondered what is something that the council is not currently doing that you think that it could include in the new climate change action plan, and whether the council would consider declaring a climate emergency as part of that plan. And the final question was, what role should council play in reducing community emissions, and by what year should council aspire to achieve zero net emissions? So yeah, so if Annie will run through the candidates, the order, and see how you respond. Thank you.
Great, so I think we'll start with Bellevue first, and then we might just go by alphabetical order. So Astrid, if you'd like to go first. Yeah, just 5 minutes and I'll give you a little ding when at the end.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yep, all good. Loud and clear.
Great. So thanks everyone. I'm very pleased to be here tonight to talk to you. I'm running for council because I firmly believe local council can do a lot to tackle climate change. It's the closest level of government to the people. Last December, when I was in a council meeting where the council were voting to embark on their new climate action plan to replace their old Our Low Carbon Future strategy, which runs out this year, one of the councillors said that she wouldn't vote for the new climate action plan because, in her exact words, which are ingrained in my memory, she said, "I don't believe humans affect the climate." I made an audible gasp in the meeting, and my companion sitting next to me whispered to me, "Astrid, control your emotion." I don't think our council does enough to tackle climate change, and I think we could do much more with a stronger determination. So I believe participatory democracy is the way forward, and Boroondara can more genuinely engage the community. Some councils have been video recording their council meetings and putting the recordings up online for several years. Stonington, for instance, has been doing this since at least 2018. Boroondara started video recording their meetings only this year because of COVID. They were forced to, and they put the recordings up online for a couple of months and then they just stopped. So our group that I'm working with through the Greens voiced some concern with them about this, and we're very pleased to see that they have agreed to resume the practice of putting the video recordings online, which they'll start to do at the end of the year. I'd like to see some more genuine effort from our council to engage the community in meetings, council meetings. I think there are way too many restrictions on the types of questions you can ask, and other councils have much simpler and shorter rules about what questions you can and can't ask in council meetings. I'd like to see our council have community advisory groups and explore the potential of online community notice boards. I'd like to see more transparency about major capital and project works. For example, the planned spend on the Customer First digital upgrade, $120 million. We don't have much scrutiny on that. We don't know much about it. So when declaring a climate emergency, we also need to commit to very strong action. I like Port Phillip's declaration, which comes with a commitment that the CEO takes into account the climate emergency in all decision making. A climate emergency is a powerful symbolic first step we must take. We also need to establish a climate action advisory group. We need, in the climate action plan that we're developing, we need clear targets and ways to monitor and measure our progress in both cutting council and community emissions. I'd like to see inventories showing council buildings that have PV, rainwater tanks, stormwater filtration and gas appliances, so that we as a community can actually assess the progress. My big focus, if I'm elected to council, will be a rapid transition to solar electricity. If we could get all businesses and homes in Boroondara using solar electricity, we would cut our community emissions by 70%. So Yarra Council already has solar PV on all its council buildings, but Boroondara, by way of comparison, has solar PV on about 19 of 200 buildings. There seems to be a disregard for the council officer's recommendations early this year that another 500,000 was spent on solar PV. That wasn't included in the budget despite lobbying from our group in the Greens. Solar should be made affordable and simple for residents and for tenants in apartments. Yes, we heard about the great Solar Saver program at Darebin, but Moreland Council also helps community groups save money by installing solar power. So they put the PV system on the leased building, council-owned building, and the community group tenants repay the capital costs over 10 years, but they get the savings from the solar. Then there are other councils like the City of Newcastle, which is doing fantastic things, putting solar panels over an old rubbish tip. And I'd love to see our council explore the possibility of building solar car parks. We obviously don't have the land to do what Newcastle are doing, but we've got lots of car parks up at Coles in North Balwyn. We cover them up, we provide shade, we create shade, and we create energy. This is happening in Adelaide, big solar car park there, and it's happening in Queensland. So about community emissions, it's fantastic to see Boroondara signed up to the Power Purchase Renewable Energy Agreement this year, and it will help them get their emissions from their council operations down. But it's important to remember that other councils cut their council emissions years ago to pretty much zero, in fact. So Moreland did that in 2012. And them now making good progress on cutting the other 99% of total emissions that the community generates. And Melbourne City Council is actually moving now towards a power purchase agreement for businesses. So I'd like a target that we cut our community emissions by 2040. Council can play a leadership role in this. There are lots of things we can do. We need to expand our green spaces and our tree canopy on private and public land. We need to support recycling, the Balwyn Repair Cafe. We need to focus on cycling and making walking safer, build the Jacket Trail and the Glass Creek link, linking North Balwyn to Kew East. We need to encourage sustainable building, and we need to look at all capital projects and make sure they proceed on the basis of need, and that we consider renovations and repairs as alternatives to new construction. We need to, that's about it probably, is it?
It's close.
Sorry.
I think I was like the road runner there, but anyway.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
I hope that wasn't too fast.
No, it was great. It was really good. Thank you.
Thanks, Astrid.
Thank you.
Might go to Austin now for your clap. Well done. So I go.
G'day, I'm Austin King. I'm also running in the Bellevue ward. I'm an independent, so I'm not associated with any political party or ideology. So my main reasons for running for council are community representation. I feel as though our current council isn't really representing the views of the community, and they're not really consulting them in ways that they have in the past. So I want to bring back the half-yearly ward meetings for Bellevue, which the current councillor got rid of. I also want to bring back or try to bring back committees for some of our parks in the area, because I know they used to exist and they no longer exist. So I want a bit more community engagement on those. I'm also opposed to the North East Link development in the area, which is going to take away 80% of the Kunang Reserve during construction and then another 19% permanently, and put the Kunang stream underground permanently, essentially turning into a drain. So that's pretty upsetting. And the other reason as well is I feel as though our local organisations aren't getting enough support from council. So I'm actually a Rotarian and I want to open up council facilities to different community organisations for lower costs or free, based on how much they contribute to the community. So moving on to the second point, in terms of, so I've already talked about community involvement. So yeah, in terms of streaming, 100%, I've already publicly said I'll support ongoing streaming of council meetings. So it's a no-brainer. I want more community engagement, if anything, and more opportunity for people to be able to speak and raise their concerns. In terms of things that council aren't doing that they should do, yeah, I'm in favour of declaring a climate emergency. I think it's also fairly no-brainer. I also feel as though it's hard to dictate plot to size ratios in terms of development and garden sizes and what people plant on their land. But I feel as though we should be opening up programs where people can get cheaper native plants to plant on their properties if it helps create habitat for pollinators such as bees and birds, because I know that's an ongoing issue, and my Rotarian group's trying to create bee hotels and more flowering plants for bees in the local area. So I also want to unlock more community access to planting plants on our nature strips, because this is actually this is council-owned land, which technically residents can't plant on. And I feel as though with garden sizes shrinking, we should be able to use this land to create more habitat for animals in the area. In terms of efficiency of council facilities, I also think that is a focus. So in terms of heating and cooling upgrades, moving away from gas in a staged period, because I also believe, say if we've installed a new boiler, it doesn't make sense throwing out a new boiler at the start of its lifespan, because so much embodied energy has gone into it. We want to consider the lifespan of the asset and also a replacement strategy to transfer it to an electrical source, and then green energy from that, which makes sense. So in terms of reducing community emissions, I'd like I've stated probably quite an aggressive date of 2025, and I really like to see the vehicle fleet upgraded to electric vehicles where possible. I'm not sure it can be done for things like tractors and utes and stuff like that. I just don't know if those products exist at this stage. Also like to see more solar on council buildings, but I don't want to chop down trees if they're overhanging buildings, because that sort of defeats the point as well. So it makes sense to put it where it makes sense and not on every building regardless. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Perfect timing. That's you timed that to the second almost. Excellent. Okay, so we might go to Greg for those 5 questions now.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. My name is Greg Ball. I'm a scientist and I have a business degree, and I'm not associated with any political party and never have been. And I first moved to Bellevue Ward more than 50 years ago, so I've seen it change quite a lot in that time. My concerns are the degradation, loss and degradation of parkland, and the noise and air pollution associated with the Eastern Freeway. So my main reasons for running for council are to take a lead on solving some of the problems we have. And when one looks at all the opportunities and problems together, it seems as if there's one project we can try and develop which would solve many of them. And that is to cover the Eastern Freeway. We'd have to work with the state and federal governments, but the idea would be to cover the Eastern Freeway, because with something like the sound tunnel that we have on CityLink, because that's the only way we can reduce the noise. And the noise and air pollution are already at levels which are uncomfortable. And if Northeast Link is built, they'll become much worse. So on such a sound tube, one could place solar collection panels and establish a solar power plant with energy storage and build a distribution network within Bellevue Ward so that we'd be on our own grid. And what we'd achieve then is substantial noise reduction, substantial reduction in air pollution, and we'd be able to put our power lines underground, and we'd have renewable, reliable electricity. Another thing I would like to take a lead on is to revisit some public transport options, because if we can increase public transport, then that's fewer cars on the road, less impact on the environment. And one of those is to extend the 48 tram route to Greythorn and possibly to Doncaster, which is previously costed proposal. Another is to revisit the proposal to put the to build the Doncaster train line along the median strip of the Eastern Freeway. And another one, which I don't know if has been discussed before, but would be of benefit to parts of Bellevue Ward and beyond, would be to extend the 72 tram route along Burke Road to Doncaster Road. Also, what I'd like to do is, in the community, is involve schools more in community events, and also to arrange more events in the community to try and connect people to build or rebuild the community spirit that was once very strong in Bellevue Ward. Also, I'd like to encourage people to plant trees, Australian natives, to increase the tree cover. Now let me get on to some of the other questions you asked about council meetings. Yes, I think it would be good for the live streaming to continue. Also, I think the motions, the amendments should be recorded in writing, and how the council has voted on each one. And also the documents used at the meeting should be made available days before the meeting, so that people who attend can be knowledgeable of what the issues are and what is going to be discussed. And as Astrid said,
You've got 1 minute left.
Making a question time, thank you. Making it easier to ask questions will also be very beneficial. In terms of 3 and 4 that you asked, I really think in many cases we need to take a step back to see what a good solution, optimal solution is. Sometimes working at a smaller community level, sometimes multi-council level, sometimes with the state government and sometimes with the federal government. And then when an optimal solution can be agreed to, then council does its part. I'm concerned about just putting solar panels on every house. I think Austin said this, it's not always a good thing to do. Sometimes a microgrid for example, is a much better solution. So my point there is simply step back and make sure we're devising good solutions.
Thank you, Greg. That's time. I've just got to turn my timer off.
I think I'm just a few minutes behind, a few seconds
Oh,
behind.
you've been
Okay,
sorry.
no, you're right. Okay. So next for Bellevue Ward, we might go to Sienna.
Hi everyone, my name is Sienna Watson and I'm the Animal Justice Party candidate for the Bellevue Ward. One of the first things I learnt when I started my Bachelor of Law and Global Studies degree 2 years ago was the disconnect between youth and the political sphere. I found that young people were either uninterested, lacked awareness, or simply did not resonate with politicians, as we are unable to see ourselves amongst them. I believe it is crucial that young people are given a voice within the community and encouraged to step up and engage. So I thought, how could I use my voice to express my concerns of environmental degradation and animal welfare to inspire meaningful changes in the lives of others? And my answer was running for local council. I am standing for council because I no longer wish to hear empty words. I want action. We need a council that is representative of our diverse demographic, one that is engaged and transparent. I would like to see a progressive council that is responsive to the climate emergency we face. The 2019 Local Satisfaction Survey found that only 62% of our citizens were satisfied with our council's consultation and engagement. I think the reluctance of the council to act upon the motion to declare climate emergency in May, despite receiving a petition from 3,900 people, which I'm sure many of you know and are aware of this, I think that's testament to this disengagement. My understanding is that council is supposed to reflect the interests of its people and uphold principles of representative democracy. This is a change I want to see. So I support the continued live streaming and recordings of all council meetings post-COVID-19 to increase engagement and consultation. For the next question on the Climate Action Plan, Boroondara has a history of underachieving in its environmental target setting. The council did not achieve the corporate goal set in 2001 as a part of its greenhouse strategy. Then in the next strategy, our low carbon future, the corporate target and community measures, targets that are set to be achieved by this year, are not going to be met. Target setting and indicators must be strengthened. Goals should be quantifiable rather than the current broad objectives, which reduce accountability. And I believe that council should be held accountable to achieve these targets. In the new action plan, I would like to see commitment to reducing single-use plastic to achieve single-use plastic-free Boroondara. Proactive measures need to be undertaken to achieve this. This can start with council operations functioning as single-use plastic-free, and this will include our libraries. This has been undertaken in Bayside Council, so it's certainly feasible. Measures to support businesses to undertake this shift, such as a single-use waste reduction fund, can be implemented. This is a goal that should also be prioritised within school resources and education programs, and that ties into shifting towards a circular economy. The preservation and protection of our parklands is of utmost importance. The Yarra River offers rich biodiversity and confers great benefit to our area. We have a duty to preserve the remaining Indigenous vegetation and to respect the Wurundjeri land which we situate ourselves upon. Urban development has led to significant degradation of our environment. I believe that the council needs to provide the community with the requisite knowledge and avenues of participation to actively address climate change. This can be achieved through improving pathways in our parklands to protect our vegetation from being trampled on. And that ties into cycling to increase cycling infrastructure to accommodate to the rising usage. And that also offers a great opportunity to reduce CO2 emissions. I often get asked why we should declare a climate emergency, and my usual response is to ask, why would it be a harmful step to take? Declaration of a climate emergency will reiterate the urgency of the matter we face, further embedding environmental considerations into council decisions and the behaviour of the community. I'm aware that it is only a small step and proactive measures must be taken for environmental preservation. I'm not suggesting that the declaration will solve the climate emergency, simply that it is appropriate, label it truthfully, and to increase awareness. 32 other councils in Victoria have declared a climate emergency, so I don't believe that we're exempt from undertaking responsibility in doing our part. It would demonstrate council leadership, commitment and consistency with neighbouring councils in addressing this global issue, such as Craig was saying. Commitment must be congruent between federal and state governments and local councils to achieve a holistic approach. Local councils should lead the way. I don't believe that we should shy away from labelling the reality we face, and this is strongly reflected in my council campaign. For the final question, I believe that local council plays a crucial role in combating climate change, for it's most intimately associated with the daily lives of its constituents. Boroondara's average per capita carbon emissions are amongst the highest in the world. As of 2009, Boroondara's community emissions were 1,761,000 tonnes of CO2. Council has yet to update this figure. They've said that there's limited data available to suggest any substantial changes, but have stated that it is rising. So for this reason, I've set my target to be 2040 to achieve net zero community emissions. Yeah, that wraps it up for me.
Perfect. Thanks, Sienna. Sorry, I didn't give you your 1 minute ding. So.
Oh, sorry, I thought that was my 1 minute ding. Sorry.
That's all right. We're doing okay for time, I think. So that's all that the Bellevue candidates that we have here tonight. So we'll move on to Cotham. Unless I've missed Felicity popping in, I think the only Cotham candidate that we have here tonight is still Bill. So if you'd like to have your 5 minutes now, Bill, that'd be great.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Annie. Okay, my name is Bill Young and I'm standing for Cotham Ward. If I could give you a little bit of background, my interest in running for council is I'm seeking a council that is open to people. I want a council that is focused on people, not the current process that it seems to be tied up in. So I'm very people focused. I want a council that is open to diversity and inclusiveness. And again, as I say, not being authoritarian. So, and this really ties into the whole climate discussion and what we're talking about right now, because with that openness, it really is about engaging people, engaging community like this group tonight, and really understanding what are the needs and not just resting back on traditional sorts of approaches. I'm interested in a range of issues with council. I'm interested in people getting the best rates possible, value for rates possible. Like everybody, you know, we pay a lot of money for rates. I want people to really council to be accountable for rates delivery and really show and demonstrate we're getting rates value. Infrastructure is another big area that safe infrastructure that is protecting people is a major concern to me. I've noticed that we've got roads and footpaths that are not in that sort of shape. That ties in with our whole environmental approach as well, and how we deal with it. I think one of the other candidates mentioned about nature strips and how we look after infrastructure like that. I think that whole thing should be opened up and discussed with the community, a better way to do it. We've rested on for decades and decades and decades a traditional approach to nature strips and the like, and we need to start thinking differently. I think one thing COVID-19 has done good for us in one sense is it's opened our thinking up about possibilities. I think this is an opportunity to pursue that further. I'm also very strong on the issue of parks and recreational facilities. I think they're needed for all community, for young and old. Another concern I have with parks is the defoliant council are using in parks. They're potentially toxic chemicals that are going around parks, that are being sprayed around parks at the moment. I think they're potentially dangerous to humans and animals. A lot of animals go around parks and are exposed to those sorts of potentially harmful chemicals and then brought back into one's home. Another area, it might not be directly environmental, but it's kind of got an issue there, is schools. The drop off and pick up from schools is another big issue that it's often chaotic around schools in mornings and afternoons. And I think there's a real safety issue there. I'm just very mindful of time. So coming on to some of the other questions that were asked about open governance, very, very important.
We've got 2 minutes left.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, yeah, thank you, thanks. Council are there for the people. It should be open where at all possible. Meetings should be opened and so people can contribute and engage with council. On the issue of issues that council could do very strongly, the solar issue, much more focus on that. And I think Craig mentioned about buildings and stuff. One of the things that Craig brought up I thought was very good is a lot of what council do is not specifically what they do to their own facilities and the like, but it's what they do to the community. So one of the big things they can do to the community, as suggested by Craig as well, is educate and get the message out to people and make it easier for people to do things like solar on roofs where it's appropriate, and also EVs, the electric vehicle stations, so that when that starts to come up, it'll just be a much more easier facility. So one of the very key issues is for education and communicating with community and really helping the whole community move forward in respect to understanding the dangers of this global warming that we're experiencing. There's no doubt global warming, as Craig said, it's here. It's like COVID-19 in a sense. It affects everybody. We're all involved in it, and it's up to every one of us as individuals, as councils, as communities, as state, federal, to all contribute to make a difference. So that's sort of paramount to me as well. I'm just wondering, did I answer the questions?
I think that's time, Bill, yeah.
Okay, all right. Sorry, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Okay.
That was really good. It's really great to hear from all of the candidates that we have here tonight. So for the next portion of the meeting, I'm going to move to the chat section. Just before we move on, if Felicity does pop in, would all the candidates be okay if we gave her the questions that we've just asked and gave her 5 minutes at some point to answer them? That would be okay. Yeah, I am not super confident, given that we are kind of running towards the end of our meeting, but that's all good. So what I'll do now is I'll get Brenda to read some of the questions from the chat. Brenda, do you think, given that we're at 20 to 9, that we should limit candidates to 1 minute answers, or do you think we should stick with 2?
Why don't we go for 1 and then see, because I'm waiting to see if anybody else puts some more questions in. We've had a lot of comments, not so many questions, but a lot of comments. I was just going to give a general feel of what people are concerned about. So
yeah,
one of the things that seems to be popping up is what do the candidates think about the council putting in more infrastructure like charging stations, putting solar panels on apartments, getting body corporates to put solar panels on apartments, and actually just sort of encouraging more energy saving and giving people more options. And if they do buy electric cars, knowing where they can charge and things like that. So how do they feel about council putting more of that infrastructure in, spending more money on those things?
Okay, sounds good. So we'll start with 1 minute, and if we don't have enough questions, we'll extend it out, but I think we're going to get some more questions. So we'll mix up the order a little bit. Maybe we'll start with Greg for answering Brenda's questions about electric vehicles.
Okay, I'm muted. I'm actually a little uncomfortable about putting solar on individual houses. One reason is it's very expensive and the quality is not good in general, and they often don't perform as well as they're supposed to and their life is only about 10 years. I actually think we should be looking at a much bigger solution, and that is at other states in the country, like Western Australia, we should be putting all of our power lines underground. We should be completely rebuilding the energy infrastructure. And in doing that, we could actually, local councils like Boroondara, surrounding councils, could even get together and do something really big, like putting a superconductor transmission line to somewhere in Victoria and have massive solar plants or wind plants or other renewable plants there. So I think that might be a much better final solution when we look back in 10 years' time.
Okay.
Sure. We might go to Sienna now.
Yeah, so, well, I think Boroondara is in a really fortunate position. Like, we have high levels of household income and consumption rates. I'm not saying that this means everyone can afford solar systems. I live with my single mother, so I'm not immune to the fact that not everyone has the luxury to afford these. So I think that the council really does need to provide incentive and awareness to encourage this shift and encourage funding to be put into these areas so that it can be an affordable initiative that everyone can implement. And I think coming from a business perspective is probably a more feasible option in terms of infrastructure. I think that will probably be the first step before we see every house with solar systems. But yeah, I think it's definitely an important step that we should take.
Great. Can we maybe, I'm not sure if it's useful to have a little recap of the question, Brenda.
Yeah. I think it was more about, it's not just about rooftop solar in domestic settings, residential settings, but this was about getting, commercial businesses to actually adopt more sustainable practices, and also the question of the charging stations for electric vehicles and things like that. So that were the main two. But I've got a couple of questions that have come in too now. So
maybe we'll stick with the minute for everybody, and maybe we'll just leave it to solar, and maybe we'll come back to charging stations, because it sounds like that might be a separate kind of issue. So if we can maybe go to Astrid for comments on residential and commercial, solar. Oh, just make sure you're on mute. You're off mute, Astrid.
So I'm aware there is an issue with some providers of residential solar not being providing good quality products. But I think one of the things that councils can do is provide an advisory service where they actually do the research to find the accredited providers that do provide the good solar products. The Darebin Solar Saver project for low income earners and for businesses as well, they provide an interest-free loan that's payable through your rates. So you get a very good a rate for the loan, and then they provide you with the good product at a good price, because they can do bulk buys as well. So I think that is definitely the way to go. And I also agree with Greg that we need to look at big community energy projects such as solar car parks. And I love the idea of the underground power lines. I'm not sure if it's a thing that council can do or not. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, and now last one for the Bellevue ward, we'll go to Austin for his comments on solar.
Yep, so solar should definitely be encouraged for residential use, but you look at the businesses we have in the Bellevue ward, a lot of them are actually small businesses in older existing buildings. So you'll see like a lot of 1920s or 1950s sort of shop fronts. A lot of them are empty at the moment. So you'll find a lot of these businesses are actually just struggling to open the doors each day at the moment. So we can't really mandate people invest in solar panels while they're just struggling to stay alive, basically. In terms of residential use, though, I think a better way would be to lobby the state government through the res codes. So in terms of development initiatives, I know a lot of larger developments now are moving towards Green Star and other initiatives like that, but it's not actually mandated anywhere. And that would be more in those sorts of... Sorry, thanks.
You're right. Perfect. And now we'll go to Bill for Cotham.
Thanks, Annie. Look, I think it's a no-brainer in a way. Definitely solar in different parts of it, whether it's promoting solar for commercial or private, both are important. I'll also extend it to the electric vehicles are very important as well. I think that's an area that's going to, in the next couple of years, going to take off. I was listening to a very interesting program on it today about electric vehicles. Yeah, so I think that's very important. Look, there's a whole bunch of issues. The underground power lines, by the way, Greg mentioned, I think is a very useful issue as well. In certain areas, I think we should definitely be going that way. Not everywhere, but it's certainly an important one. There's one other area that just came to mind. It's just gone out of my mind. The other issue is it's not just about solar. If you really want to lower energy, it's about how there's a whole lot of new homes in Boroondara at the moment, and Boroondara is changing over very quickly. There's a lot about energy savings through heating and cooling and the like. So how we do that smartly is important. Okay, yeah. Sorry. Thanks, Brenda.
Thank you.
Perfect. I might just, before we go to the next question, sorry, Brenda, where this part of the meeting is scheduled to finish at 9, considering we've probably got a few more questions we might like to get through, would everybody or anybody be interested in going for an additional 10 minutes or so on the other side? Is that okay with all the candidates? Okay, perfect. All right, sorry. Go away, Brenda.
There was one question about North East Link, and I know some of the candidates have already touched on this, but there's a very specific question about whether the council should have pulled out of the court case that was opposing North East Link, and if the link still goes ahead, what position do they think the council should take? So that was one question, and I've got a couple more, so if you wanted to comment on that.
Great, okay. Let's start with Austin this time.
Okay, well, if you hadn't already known, the council has already signed up to a gag order with the North East Link, so they can't actually discuss anything about it other than what the Victorian government publicly announces. So regardless, whoever gets elected is also bound by this gag order, which isn't really democratic. So yes, they should have fought harder against it. I don't think they can reopen a court case at this stage. If it does go ahead, I'm actually a project manager in the construction industry by background. If it does go ahead, we need to make sure that over the many years of construction, it'll be 4 or 5 years of boots on the ground, heavy industry and trucks in the area. We need to make sure that the delivery and opening gates for the drop-off points for materials are not on our suburban streets, because it is going to be very, very disruptive in the immediate areas. So we really need to control what the builders are doing. And yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
All right, not much time.
Yeah, it's not a lot of time. It's not enough time. Yeah, sorry.
All right, we'll go to Greg for comment on North East Link.
Do you mind just repeating that question? It was very specific and very short.
Oh, yeah, it was about whether the council, if you had an opinion about whether the council should have pulled out of the court case opposing the link. But if it goes ahead, what next steps do you think the council should take in terms of the link going ahead?
Yes, okay. I didn't think the lawsuit was a good idea in the first place. To me, it's a scientific, engineering and political issue, and I didn't see what they could get out of a lawsuit at all. Maybe they got a few small things. What should the council do? The council should go back to the beginning and ask them to reevaluate options B and C, which I think made much more sense. And if option A does go through, so it connects to Bellevue, then we have to influence the project as much as we can on a scientific and engineering basis for it to have the least impact on the community. And that's where, as I mentioned before, the only possible solution to save the community is to have a sound tube. Otherwise, the noise and the air pollution will be extreme and the community is lost. And even if we have electric vehicles, we will still have noise pollution because that's tires on the road, and we'll still have particulate pollution as well.
Perfect timing, Greg. So we'll go to Sienna now.
Well, I definitely would have opposed it in the first beginning, but in terms of what council can do now, considering they have agreed with a compromise to not speak on the issue, I think it does turn back responsibility to the community to continue protesting against it and try to get that shift changed. As other candidates are saying, it's incredibly burdensome upon the Bellevue ward, and it's going to have a major impact on our parklands. And I don't think it's adequate that you can tear down these old trees that provide habitat and so much benefit for our municipality and replace it with small trees and just plant new ones that are going to take decades and decades to grow before they provide any substantial tree canopy cover. So I think there's definitely a long way to go in terms of how the council could address the impacts the link would have. So I will hope to see that the council continues to fight against it.
Great. And we'll go to Bill from Cotham now.
Yeah, thanks, Annie. Look, I think Austin's point about we can't go back where it's gone now is a fair one, but I think the other aspect is, so looking, I'm more kind of focused on looking forward, and Austin's spot on too in terms of what he said. I'm also got a lot of construction background and project management background, and I think what we can do really, effectively from here is look at what how the project is being managed, and in fact, what impact is it? Is there something we can do to ameliorate the impact on the parks and the trees in that area, and also the impact on the residents in the area as well? So we can't do much about what the council has already agreed, but we can really focus our attention on making them accountable and pulling them up in the contractors in terms of the impact they'll do on the area. And they can have a really gross impact or a minimised impact depending on how council run it out, and hold the state government to account in terms of what they do.
Great, perfect timing again. And now to Astrid from Bellevue.
So the Northeast Link isn't a terrible proposal for our area. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. There are many groups fighting against it. It's an incredibly expensive project, $16 billion. The toll company has pulled out of it because they don't think they'll be able to make money from it, so the public are going to be wearing the cost of it. The council should definitely not have pulled out of action on this. How could they justify that morally if they are representing our interests? This project is going to have a massive impact on the people of Bellevue. It's going to choke Doncaster Road, Bulleen Road and Chandler Highway with traffic. It's a widening of the Eastern Freeway as well to 24 lanes in the widest part. okay, if it's imposed on us and we absolutely don't have a say in it, which I don't think is the case at this point, we should be lobbying for better noise walls, because North East Link are trying to get away without putting noise walls in some places. And it's going to make it very noisy for people in East Kew and Baldwin. Yeah.
Thank you.
Perfect. Well done, everyone. All right, ready to get a couple more questions in, Brenda?
There was a particular question here about how candidates might see the positive sort of ideas and thoughts and plans they might have, and only some people will be elected. So how can the momentum continue? There seems to be a lot of support on the chat for the various ideas that have been offered, but can that momentum continue if somebody's not elected to council? How does that continue in terms of community engagement? I don't know if that's a clear question or more a comment, but if you want a specific question, one was about plastic bags. How do candidates see that they can actually get businesses in Boroondara to ban plastic bags, because there's very little interest apparently. That was one question. As well as about heritage overlays.
Oh, goodness.
How that influences when you can put solar panels on. So take your pick.
We've got a lot. Maybe it
start with the
sounds
first
like
one.
everyone got a lot of ideas. So maybe we might get, Brenda, if you're a little bit mixed up, we might get you to re-go over what you want.
Well, it's just, I mean, there are a lot of comments actually that and questions being posed as suggestions, and I'm trying to frame them as questions, but I suppose the only real one was about plastic bags and plastic bag use in Boroondara, how candidates might influence that change in council, get council involved.
Sure. I don't know, should we do a minute on that and then we'll move to closing statements, everyone? Does that sound like a good plan? All right, let's start with Sienna first on plastic bags. A minute, go.
All right, so quickly on plastic bags. The City of Melbourne has as I was saying before, has a single-use waste reduction fund where they grant businesses up to $2,000 to reduce their usage of plastic bags and coffee cups and bottled water and such things. So I think that's definitely something we could implement here, and that would really encourage businesses to prioritise getting rid of single-use plastic. Also on the comment before about how we would all work together, I know in the Bellevue ward I've spoken to all the candidates that are here, and I know that we're all very in touch and committed to the same environmental policy. So I think if one of us is to be elected, I'm confident that we're all going to continue to fight for the environment. So I think you can be assured that some candidates will push for that. And also I think establishing advisory groups in the council, especially one for the environment, that would be a way for environmental concerns to still be prioritised no matter who's elected.
Perfect. We'll go to Bill.
Okay, thank you. Plastic bags, yep, they should be definitely, there's so much damage done by plastic bags and other plastic things. It's not just plastic bags. So I think there should be a whole engagement like there has been with trying to reduce plastic bags from Coles and Woolworths, for example. But there's a lot more plastic bags still being consumed in that sort of environment. So I think we should really have a very clear focus on trying to do it. We've come halfway, but not the full way. The issue about people involvement, I think it's really paramount that we utilise groups like this and on candidates that have missed out on getting elected. As I think Sienna said there, we're all passionate about these issues, and everybody's got something to contribute. So I think we should listen to people who want to make a difference and try to, as best as possible, engage people and be as constructive as possible in terms of listening and deeply listening and bringing those views to the table and dropping some of our defences and opening ourselves up to learning as well, because none of us have got all the answers.
Great, perfect timing. And to you, Astrid?
So yeah, plastic bags. Before COVID hit, one of my top things was to follow in the footsteps of the City of Hobart, which has introduced a citywide ban on takeaway food containers and single-use plastics. So with COVID, of course, we're all wanting to support takeaway food restaurants, but I don't know if I'm the only person, but the plastic is a big obstacle for me. I'm sure there are lots of other people in Boroondara who feel the same way. I know the businesses are struggling at the moment. It's not the time to put extra costs on them, but there are reusable takeaway food schemes operating in Melbourne, and in the US they have a fantastic one where they actually take the dishes from the restaurant, wash them, return them by bike to the restaurant. And I reckon we could maybe start a social enterprise that actually did that in Glenferrie Road. I think that would be a brilliant thing. And our waste at the moment with COVID has increased massively, our plastic waste. We're going to be in this situation for a while longer. I think it's really a current issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. And we'll go to Austin for a minute.
Yeah, so plastic bags, no-brainer. A lot of big organisations have already acted on this in the area. Again, local businesses, I don't see that many local businesses using plastic bags. There are some with the takeaway, but again, I think that's a larger issue. Like, to be able to combat that, you'd almost need to have a standardised system of reusable containers that get fed back in and used between all businesses that are pretty much exactly the same, and then you can reuse it. I know India has a lot of that with their special, the metal lunch boxes that stack on top of each other. They already have a system like that. It's quite old, and yeah, but yeah, it's a no-brainer. It makes sense. Yeah, I think it's fairly easy to do.
Great, and we'll go to Greg for a minute.
I may be showing my age, but when I was young, we hardly used plastic at all. We had paper, cardboard, natural fibres and glass, and really those could replace plastic to a great extent. I think the problem with plastic bags is we have different kinds of people. Plastic bags can be recycled, and some people are very respectful of the environment, but some people aren't, and they're the bags that end up in the drains in the ocean. So, that's the problem with us here.
No, that's great. It's yeah, I guess it's one of those ones that seems like plastic seems like we've got past in a lot of ways, but as Astrid's saying, we can still do more. So we're getting quite pressed for time. Would everyone be okay to do just a minute closing statement before we wrap it all up? I do apologise again, it's not very long, but hopefully you can get through everything you want to say. So we might go back to our original order. So we'll start with Astrid.
Okay, thank you. So look, we can't forget that many people are doing it tough right now. We've got to try and build our local economy and support people who've lost their jobs, struggling to pay the rent and don't have a home. We need to take care of the needs of young people, the elderly, people with intellectual disabilities and mental health problems. We need a fair future with a safe climate. I've been working with a small group of people from my branch on policies for local government for over a year, and I also supported our candidate in the last local election. I have a terrific team of people working with me. They have incredible skills and experience, and they will provide support to me if I'm elected. I'm convinced that other councils are doing a lot more than Boroondara, and I'm inspired by what's happening around Australia. It makes me feel good and it stops me worrying every day about climate change. I want Boroondara to catch up, overtake and lead in sustainable practices and climate change, and I want them to prioritise the needs of the people who are most vulnerable in our community. Thank you.
Perfect. We'll go to Austin. Oh,
So yeah, so I am an independent. I want to represent the community and increase the community's engagement in council, because I feel as though we haven't been represented that well currently. I'm also trying to bring in more tree planting, obviously, with the land that we have, and increase whatever parkland we can, even though we're losing too much. I'm also trying to protect our community, what I think is going to be a very difficult period with the North East Link development, if it does actually go ahead. And I'm also interested in the different construction projects happening around the neighbourhood, because you find a lot of side strips and walkways dug up and fairly unusable if you've got a pram or a wheelchair, or if you're not steady on your feet as well. And also I want to support our local organisations and businesses with increased access to council platforms and advertising and meeting rooms and things like that. Because I know most Rotary clubs at the moment are struggling for membership, same as the Neighbourhood Watch. These organisations are basically dying. If we don't look after them, they're not going to be there. So thank you.
Great. Then we'll go to Greg for Bellevue.
Okay, well, the essence of why I'm a candidate is to lead on big projects, which is public transport, as I mentioned before, trains and trams, and also to attenuate the noise and pollution from the freeway. And to get back to one of those questions, I think there are several initiatives, like the ones I mentioned, that if the candidate's not elected, they will die, because one needs the authority of being a councillor and the authority of council to actually push them forward. That being said, a lot of people have reached out to me since I put my hand up to be candidate, and I realise there's a lot of expertise and a lot of enthusiasm in the community to get things done. And that's why regular ward meetings would be good to encourage a participatory democracy and draw on the full strengths of the community.
Perfect. And to Sienna for Bellevue.
Well, I envision a better life for all in Boroondara, for your domestic animals, for our threatened grey-headed flying fox population, and for people alike. I want to see a sustainable council, one that recognises the emergency of the climate and our potential to contribute to its reduction. We need a council that embraces change and is willing to be at the forefront of it, because we are most certainly capable of doing so. I believe it's time for a breath of fresh air in our council, and it's the youth of today that will shape the future, so I think that we all have a role to play.
Perfect. And sorry, Bill, I'm always leaving you to the end in your own,
No problem.
your own walk.
I'm in Cotham by myself.
Yeah.
No, all good. Thank you, Annie. Look, I'm after a council that is really for people. It's really impressed on me that that's so important. I deal with a lot of different authorities, and the way they handle people is very poor in my respect in what I've seen. Likewise with Boroondara, to some extent, I wouldn't be overcritical on that, because they've been good in some areas but poor in others. So I want a council that is really, as a few people have said, democratic, open, just, fair to people. I think as Astrid mentioned about looking after everybody, the young, the old, those who've got issues. We're a community, and it's all about community. I want a safe and healthy environment for people. I think the issue I mentioned about chemical defoliants and like really concerns me. And I guess as an overlay on all of it, because it kind of impacts everything, is the climate and our environment. So, I mean, if we don't take note of that and try to do something about it, we're going to pay for it. And I've got a number of children. I want the next generation to experience good outcomes from what we do today. So yeah, pretty straightforward. Okay.
Perfect. Well done, everyone, and well done on being very concise. thank you so much to all the candidates for coming tonight. It's very well done to turn up and face the public, even if we can't actually face the public. So we're very appreciative of it. We can give everyone a big round of applause for coming along.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for the audience and for your questions. I think if you want to contact any of the candidates directly, you can go by the VEC website. I'm sure they'd all be very happy to answer any of your questions. We will save the chat and we'll forward the questions that we didn't get to tonight. There were so many great comments, such a good discussion going on. So we'll forward those questions to the candidates as well and follow up. Before we go, a little plug. Light of Footprints is having a meeting in 4 weeks' time. It's going to be on the fight to save our forests, and we'd love it if everybody could come along. And Brenda will put the link in the chat. Yeah. And if anyone, oh no, that's all right. I'm sure you can find it online as well, just on the Light of Footprints website. And like us on social media, and then you can be up to date with all these things. If you'd like to save the chat for any of your, you know, future discussions or anything, you can do that by selecting the little dots in the bottom of the chat window. And other than that, I think that's it. I think this went fairly well, all things considered.
Very good. Thank you, Annie, and thank you, Brenda, as well.
Well, thank you.
Really
Annie.
well done.
Thank you so much. Light of Footprints.
Thanks all the other candidates.
Yes, agreed.
Commitment,
Other
people
candidates.
being committed to come and be involved. It's really good.
Yeah, it's great. I think we're feeling positive. Things are going to be good.
Indeed.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Excellent, everyone. We'll talk to you all soon.